Thank you for joining us this morning. You're watching our mid-morning edition of Arirang News on this Monday, April 6th, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Shin Se-min. Before we begin, these are the stories we're following at this hour. Hoping to continue the trend of slowing COVID-19 infections, South Korea enforces stricter rules on self-quarantines and tougher punishments for violators. A week that's as significant as Pearl Harbor and 9/11, says the U.S. Surgeon General. President Trump also warns Americans to prepare for the toughest week over the coronavirus as the United States leads the world in COVID-19 cases. 9 days to go before the nation heads to the polling booths to pick out their representatives. We give you an update on the political parties' campaign pledges. Our top story this morning, South Korea has managed to stabilize its number of new coronavirus infections, and now it's working tooth and nail to prevent a second wave. But despite such efforts, an increasing number of people who are ignoring their quarantine orders has been identified, so the government has announced some severe new penalties for those violators. Our Park Se-young starting us off.
Starting Sunday, South Korea has introduced stricter punishments for those found violating the country's self-quarantine rules. Before, it was a fine of up to $2,400. But now it's up to a year in prison or a fine of up to $8,100. The same goes for anyone who lies when filling out health-related forms when entering the country. The punishment was raised following a series of self-quarantine violations reported by local governments. The rule has been that anyone showing symptoms of the coronavirus and anyone coming into contact with a patient has to self-quarantine for 2 weeks. Since April, all people arriving from overseas have also been ordered to self-quarantine for 2 weeks. Now, around 27,000 people are under lockdown, and among them, 20,000 are recent arrivals. Of the 81 newly confirmed cases in South Korea on Sunday, 40 of them were imported. 24 of them were found upon arrival at the airport, but 16 were detected later. The concern is that these people could set off a second wave of infections, and the fact that some of them have been roaming around their communities has people worried. South Korea anticipates that the extension of its social distancing campaign will decrease the number of new cases to fewer than 50 per day, and cases with unknown routes of transmission to less than 5%. Park Se-young, Arirang News.
With India seeing an uptick in its number of coronavirus infections, a total of 220 South Korean nationals have been evacuated and arrived back home earlier this morning on a special chartered flight. On board the Korean Air flight were expats, international students, and travelers who departed New Delhi on Sunday afternoon. And just as everyone else, return nationals are being placed under a mandatory 14-day quarantine, while those who test positive will be transferred to a medical facility for treatment. The South Korean embassy in the Indian capital is looking to send a second chartered flight later this week. U.S. President Donald Trump has warned the coronavirus death toll in the U.S. will escalate over the next few weeks and could be on par with the number of fatalities seen in world wars. The U.S. Surgeon General also gave a grim prediction, comparing the numbers to other tragedies in the U.S. history. Our Lee Sin-jae with a story.
Speaking to reporters at the White House over the weekend, U.S. President Donald Trump warned COVID-19 deaths in the U.S. will explode over the next 1 to 2 weeks.
Yes, this will be probably the toughest week between this week and next week. And there'll be a lot of death, unfortunately, but a lot less death than if this wasn't done, but there will be death.
Trump also compared the predicted numbers to be on par with the number of fatalities seen in world wars. While the U.S. president didn't give any estimates of how many people will die in the coming weeks, Trump administration officials earlier said as many as 200,000. Speaking on Fox News Sunday, U.S. Surgeon General Jerome Adams also said the coming week is going to be the hardest and the saddest for most Americans' lives, comparing the predicted death toll in the coming weeks to be a Pearl Harbor moment and a 9/11 moment. Adams also issued a warning to the 8 U.S. governors who have not yet ordered a statewide directive urging their residents to stay at home. Meanwhile, some U.S. states and cities have reported that masks, gloves, ventilators, and other essential equipment from the federal stockpile are unusable. Nearly 6,000 masks sent to Alabama reportedly had dry rot with a 2010 expiration date, while Oregon reported masks with faulty elastic, causing the straps to snap, exposing medical workers to the virus. More than 150 ventilators sent to LA were also said to be broken and had to be repaired. Last month, the CDC acknowledged some items in the federal stockpile had exceeded their shelf life, but were being sent to hospitals due to the potential urgent demand. 이승재, Arirang News.
And now to some updates on the COVID-19 pandemic around the world. The number of cases in Japan continues to soar, with daily confirmed cases exceeding 300 for 3 straight days now. The total number of infections in that country now stands at over 4,500, with the death toll topping 100. And the situation in India is worsening as well. The number of infections have nearly doubled over the past 3 days, surpassing 3,500 with more than 80 dead. Confirmed cases in Switzerland have crossed the 21,000 mark with near 560 deaths. But one of the hardest hit countries, Italy, is showing signs of improvement. That country reported 525 deaths on Sunday alone, the lowest number of daily deaths in 2 weeks. It's becoming more and more apparent as researchers learn more about the COVID-19 that testing is the key to flattening the curve of coronavirus infections. This has prompted countries to search high and low for high-quality diagnostic kits. And those produced in South Korea are in overwhelming global demand. Our Kim Sang-min tells us why more than 100 countries around the world are looking to South Korea for help in their time in need.
As the COVID-19 pandemic rages around the world, more than 100 different countries have made inquiries about the test kits made and used in South Korea. For Lithuania, Bulgaria, and the U.S., their respective leaders directly reached out to President Moon Jae-in to make urgent requests for South Korea's kits. Over the past few months, South Korea's diagnostic kits have proven their speed and accuracy through hundreds of thousands of samplings. Once the test is done, the kits show a reliable positive or negative result within 6 hours. This contrasts sharply with Chinese-made kits. The Spanish government recently decided not to use test kits that bought from China because of their low reliability of only 30%. The key behind South Korea's rapid test kit development was immediate action taken by the government and the country's innovative medical companies. As soon as South Korea confirmed its first case in January, government officials gathered the heads of several local medical companies, urged them to produce high-quality kits, and vowed that they'd be approved extremely quickly. South Korean experts also worked hard to minimize potential errors and constantly provided advice to ensure the kits would be the highest possible quality.
The Korea Centers for Disease Control and Prevention urged local medical companies to quickly develop a coronavirus test kit. We then immediately conducted concise evaluations on the new kits.
Adding to its credibility, South Korea's test method for infectious diseases has been accepted as a draft international standard by the International Organization for Standardization. After receiving final approval from all member states, the method is expected to be designated as an international standard before the end of the year. Kim Sang-min, Arirang News.
Shifting focus, campaigns for the 2020 general elections begin across the nation as there is now less than 9 days to go before Koreans head to the polls on April 15th. With just a little over a week left, political parties have unveiled their campaign promises. Our Hong Yu has more on the major pledges of ruling and main opposition parties.
Their campaigns are underway ahead of the 2020 general elections, and parties have introduced their campaign pledges that are filled with ambitious goals for the next 4 years. Today, let's take a look at some key pledges of the ruling Democratic Party and the opposition United Future Party. In terms of the economy, the Democratic Party pledges to keep pushing for innovative growth, and the United Future Party plans to repeal income-led growth policies. The Democratic Party will prioritize fostering new industries with a focus on the so-called Big Three of systems semiconductors, future cars, and biohealth. It also plans to help SMEs flourish, especially those in the manufacturing sector. It will push for firms to employ full-time workers for permanent tasks and will eliminate discrimination against non-regular workers. The United Future Party plans to change the minimum wage system and increase flexibility over employees' maximum working hours. It will cut red tape for businesses and the stock market. Regarding security and unification, both parties pledge to work toward peace on the Korean peninsula. But the Democratic Party plans to do so by promoting its new northern and southern policies, turning South Korea's military into the fifth best in the world, and strengthening diplomatic relations with the U.S., China, Japan, and Russia. The United Future Party focuses on strengthening defense ties with allies such as the U.S. and Japan, and wants to play the leading role in the denuclearization talks with North Korea. Lastly, the welfare sector. The Democratic Party pledges to create an equal society, while the United Future Party pledges to create a community that can satisfy everyone. The Democratic Party wishes to reduce the burden of tuition for university students and make society safe from digital sex crimes, domestic violence, and stalking. Both parties discussed how they could tackle sex crimes, as the nation was recently shocked by a digital sex crime that had underage female victims. The United Future Party plans to increase punishment for those convicted of sex crimes against minors. They also plan to provide financial support for pets' medical costs. But making pledges is a lot easier than carrying them out, and that'll be the next challenge for whichever party comes out on top in these elections. 홍유, Arirang News.
North Korea will convene its largest political gathering this Friday, and eyes are on the possible message its leader Kim Jong-un will announce at the event. The regime could also lay out some economic measures in an attempt to boost its economy after the North sealed its borders in light of the coronavirus outbreak. Our Kim Hyo-sun tells us more.
North Korea has decided to hold its Supreme People's Assembly on April 10th. This is the regime's largest political gathering, which brings together nearly 700 party members from across North Korea. The decision comes as the North has been focused on curbing the spread of the coronavirus, including quickly shutting its border with China in late January. In February, the regime also scaled down its celebrations for its Military Foundation Day and reportedly canceled the annual birthday celebration for late former leader Kim Jong-il.
As seen in recent North Korean state media reports, nationwide emergency quarantine measures are being intensified. It looks like the regime is carrying out full-fledged quarantine against COVID-19.
It can be seen as an opportunity for Pyongyang to renew its resolve ahead of the Day of the Sun, the annual public holiday to celebrate the birthday of its founder Kim Il-sung, amid the difficulties inflicted by the coronavirus pandemic. Attention is now drawn to the message North Korean leader Kim Jong-un will deliver at the event, especially in regards to the regime's provocations and statements. It's also left to be seen whether the regime will roll out legislation for boosting its economy due to the COVID-19 outbreak, as the regime's largest political gathering usually focuses on budget bills and reshuffling personnel at state organizations. Kim Hyo-sun, Arirang News.
Good morning. Some of inland regions had a freezing start to the day, but the chilly morning will turn into a nice early April afternoon. So we'll see wide temperature gaps of 15 to 20 degrees Celsius. Let's address accordingly. Meanwhile, the dryness in the air continues for much of the country now. Seoul has been under a dry weather warning for nearly a week, and it's very likely alerts could be upgraded to a warning in other parts of the country as well. Now, taking a closer look at today's highs, temperatures will skyrocket to 21 and 19 degrees Celsius over in Gyeongju and Chuncheon from freezing lows. And Jeju, however, will be a couple notches cooler than seasonal average, topping out at 14 degrees Celsius this afternoon. The weather looks promising for most regions this week. Readings will hover right around the season norms under bright skies, while parts of Gangwon-do province will see a rain in the middle of the week. That's Korea for you, and here's the international weather for views around the globe.
And that's our time at this hour on Arirang News. We'll be back with more of the day's headlines coming up in our later newscast at noon Korea time. Thanks for watching and goodbye.